James Forten was not just a Revolutionary War sailor. He became one of the wealthiest black businessmen in early America and turned his sail loft in Philadelphia into a powerhouse for abolition, voting rights, and community uplift. Welcome to the Celebrating America 250 podcast. This series is dedicated to the men and women who wore the uniform and then came home to build, invent, and lead in ways that reshaped our nation. Across these episodes, we honor veteran innovators from every era of American history. Warriors who became entrepreneurs, engineers, organizers, and visionaries, carrying the mindset of service into factories, farms, shipyards, laboratories, and boardrooms. In each short story, we will trace a simple arc: where they came from, how they served, the moment they pivoted to civilian life, what they built, and the legacy they left behind for all of us. This is not just about dates and titles. It is about courage under fire, resilience in transition, and the quiet, determined work of building a stronger country in peacetime. Interesting fact: in the early 1800s, if you were a ship captain sailing into Philadelphia and needed state-of-the-art sails, there's a good chance you did business with a black entrepreneur who had once been a teenage prisoner of war on a British prison ship. That man was James Forten. He started as a powder boy in the Revolutionary War, survived capture, refused an offer of freedom that would have meant betraying his country, and went on to own a sailmaking business so successful that he became one of the city's leading taxpayers, while quietly funding the fight against slavery. Today, we're going to follow Forten's journey the way a veteran or entrepreneur would, from the hold of a warship, to the floor of a sail loft, to the front lines of America's long struggle for freedom and equality. Early life and background: James Forten was born free in Philadelphia in 1766 into a black community that lived under constant economic and legal pressure in a slaveholding society. His father, Thomas Forten, worked as a sailmaker, and from an early age James saw both the physical craft of the trade and the precarious reality of black life in colonial America, where freedom could be eroded by poverty, prejudice, and changing laws. He attended a Quaker school for free black children, gaining literacy and numeracy that would later become crucial tools for both business and activism. But tragedy struck when his father died while James was still young, forcing him to help support the family and bringing him into the sail loft as a laborer rather than just an observer. Those early years taught him three things at once: the value of skilled work, the importance of education, and how fragile freedom could be for a black family in a port city built on trade and slavery. Leadership under pressure. As the Revolutionary War intensified, Forten made a decision that would shape the rest of his life. At about 14, he signed on as a powder boy aboard the privateer Royal Louis, a continental vessel attacking British shipping off the American coast. The risks were enormous. Powder boys handled gunpowder charges under fire. One mistake could be fatal. For a young black teen, capture also carried the threat of being sold into slavery, regardless of his birth status. When the Royal Louis was captured by the British, Forten and the crew were taken aboard the infamous prison ship Jersey, anchored in New York Harbor, one of the deadliest places in the entire war, where thousands of prisoners died from disease and neglect. Forten survived, in part because of a small act of human connection. He struck up a rapport with the captain's son during capture, and when the boy's father learned of it, he reportedly offered Forten a chance to go to England and live as part of the family. James Forten refused. He chose to remain a prisoner rather than abandon the American cause or separate himself permanently from his people and his home in Philadelphia. Eventually released in a prisoner exchange, he walked back to Philadelphia, literally returning on foot to the city where his future would unfold. Those months taught him leadership under pressure in the most brutal way possible, enduring captivity, making a values-driven choice when his own freedom was on the line, and then rebuilding his life from nothing when the war ended. The pivot. Carrying the mindset into civilian life. Back in Philadelphia after the war, Forten faced the same question many veterans do: how do you turn wartime grit into a peacetime path? He returned to the docks and the sail loft, working for white sailmaker Robert Bridges, the same trade his father had practiced, but now in a country that had declared independence without abolishing slavery. What he brought with him from service was not rank or pension, but mindset. He had seen death on a prison ship. He had turned down an easy escape. He had walked home with nothing. That experience forged a refusal to accept half freedom for himself or his community. In the sail loft, Forten applied the same discipline and attentiveness that had kept him alive at sea. He learned not just the manual craft, but the business, inventory, customer relationships, quality control, and the economics of outfitting ships in a major port. Robert Bridges noticed. He valued Forten's skill and reliability enough not only to promote him, but eventually to choose him, a black veteran in a racist era, as the man who would take over the business. The pivot moment came when Bridges offered him the chance to purchase the sail loft, an opportunity that was rare for any worker and nearly unheard of for a black man at that time. Forten seized it. He decided that the best way to honor the freedom he had risked his life for was to build an enterprise that could employ, protect, and uplift black workers in the heart of a city still entangled with slavery. What he invented, founded, or grew, as owner of the sail loft, James Forten transformed it from a workplace into a platform. He mastered the technical side of sailmaking, introducing refinements in design and production that made his sails highly sought after by ship captains who cared about speed, durability, and reliability. Under his leadership, the loft became one of the most successful sailmaking businesses in Philadelphia. At its peak, it employed dozens of workers, many of them free black men who would have struggled to find fair employment elsewhere. Forten instituted something unusual for his time. He paid black and white workers the same wages for the same work, a radical statement of equality on his own shop floor. Financial success gave him leverage. He accumulated significant wealth, by some accounts becoming one of the richest black men in the United States, and he used that capital not for luxury, but for movement building. His business funded abolitionist newspapers like William Lloyd Garrison's The Liberator, supported anti-slavery societies, and underwrote organizing efforts in Philadelphia's black community. Forten opened his home and office as meeting spaces, turning commercial property into organizing infrastructure. He helped petition against colonization schemes, arguing that black Americans were not foreigners to be exported, but citizens whose future was here. In letters, like his 1831 correspondence with Garrison, he pressed for resources to be directed toward education and apprenticeship for black youth, so they could become useful to themselves and others, rather than toward shipping them to Africa. In short, he built a profitable, respected maritime business, a fair-wage workplace for black and white workers, a financial engine for the abolitionist movement, and black civic life in Philadelphia. How it changed lives, industry, and community. James Forten's legacy lives on at 3 levels: personal, community, and national. Personally, he proved that a black veteran could move from the lowest rung, a teenage POW on a death ship, to owning a major business in a racially hostile economy without surrendering his commitment to justice. For Philadelphia's black community, his sail loft and his home became hubs of opportunity and resistance. He employed and trained workers, supported churches and mutual aid societies, and raised children and grandchildren who continued his activism, including his daughter Harriet Forten Purvis, a key leader in the abolitionist and women's rights movements. Nationally, his money, letters, and strategy helped sustain the early abolitionist movement. He funded publications that shaped public opinion, signed and circulated petitions, and argued relentlessly that America's promise meant full citizenship and rights for black people, not exile. Forten's story also offers a powerful model for today's veterans and entrepreneurs. He translated wartime resilience into patient, disciplined business building. He used profit as fuel for principle, not a substitute for it. He treated his company as both an economic engine and a tool for structural change. From the deck of a privateer to the floor of a sail loft, and from a prison ship to the front lines of abolition, James Forten shows us what it looks like when a veteran decides that service doesn't end with the war, it just changes battlefields.